Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. Dynamite tonight was from the Simmons Bank Arena in Little Rock, Arkansas, and the show just ended. And Dynamite tonight, this was their 250th episode, and it was a good show in my opinion. Of course, the whole hour of the show was taken up by the International Championship match between MJF and Will Ospreay. And it was a fantastic match. The best match of the night. This was a pay-per-view match here on Dynamite. And then we also got Mercedes Mone versus Nyla Rose for the TBS Championship, which, And then we had the main event, Swerve Strickland versus Kazuchika Okada, champion versus champion. So 3 matches on the show tonight. And next week is Blood and Guts, which I am looking forward to. And I may go live next week for a watch-along for Blood and Guts. So, that's my plan for next Wednesday for Dynamite. But overall, Dynamite was a good show tonight. But pretty much the show, like I said, was taken up by MJF and Will Ospreay for that whole first hour. But anyway, let's jump right into the review. Dynamite opened up tonight for its 250th episode with the International Championship on the line. Will Ospreay defend the title against MJF. And what a match this was. This was a fantastic match. It was a pay-per-view match here on TV, on Dynamite, on TBS. And MJF and Will Ospreay gave it all they got here in the match. And the crowd was really enjoying this match. They were on their feet. Later on during the match, they were entertained by what they were seeing, and just the match was great. It was just great television by what we were seeing with MJF and Will Ospreay. And the match went 59 minutes and 58 seconds. Bell ended up ringing at 8:04, and the match ended at 9:03. But MJF was the first one, to make his way out. And of course, he got boos from the crowd. And then Will Ospreay ended up making his way out, the international champion, which Ospreay got a big pop from the crowd there in Little Rock. So we had Ospreay and MJF end up staring each other down as the bell rang. MJF left the ring. He escaped to the crowd, and he ended up ripping up a sign from a fan because it appeared that MJF was going to, drink some water, but he ended up ripping up a sign, and he ended up heading back to the ring. Ospreay ended up going to lock up on MJF, but MJF ended up evading Ospreay for him to strut. MJF was strutting. So both guys ended up locking up. Both Ospreay and MJF were trading holds. Ospreay ended up flipping out of a wrist lock, and he ended up giving a strut of his own. So Ospreay ended up strutting. MJF got a side headlock on Ospreay, but Ospreay got to the ropes. We had both MJF and Ospreay end up locking up again. And Ospreay was pulling on MJF's hair, and MJF ended up complaining to the ref about, his hair being pulled by Ospreay. So Ospreay ended up sending MJF out of the ring. MJF ended up saving himself from Ospreay doing a dive to him, but Ospreay ended up catching MJF with a, dive, a different dive. So Ospreay ended up bringing MJF back into the ring. Ospreay delivered a back suplex to MJF, to which Ospreay went for the cover, and MJF ended up kicking out. And we had Ospreay end up setting up for the hidden blade, and MJF ended up getting to the corner to avoid the hidden blade. MJF then reeled Ospreay into the bottom turnbuckle, and we had MJF end up taunting the crowd, and he ended up locking Ospreay in an armbar. Ospreay got to his feet, but MJF ended up slamming Ospreay down. MJF ended up going for a back suplex to Ospreay, but Ospreay ended up carrying out, and he was caught with a jawbreaker by MJF. So MJF ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay ended up kicking out. Ospreay ended up managing to escape a heat seeker by MJF, but MJF caught Ospreay off the springboard for a cutter, and MJF ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay kicked out. Ospreay once again evaded a heat seeker from MJF. Ospreay ended up setting up for an elbow off the top turnbuckle to MJF. So both guys started to trade punches. Ospreay ended up getting sent to the ropes by MJF. Ospreay then caught MJF with a forearm, facing him to the outside. So MJF ended up taking a breather, but Ospreay caught MJF with a cartwheel dive over the top rope, which looked great. Ospreay ended up going up top to deliver a moonsault to MJF, but MJF rolled out of the way, and Ospreay then ended up hitting a second moonsault, and MJF tried to roll forward, but he got caught with a standing shooting star press by Ospreay, and Ospreay ended up going for the cover. MJF ended up kicking out, and Ospreay followed that up with a sky twister to MJF. Ospreay ended up going for another cover, and MJF ended up kicking out. MJF then rolled to the outside, but he was then caught by Ospreay. Ospreay ended up dropping MJF back to the floor, and he ended up grabbing a table from ringside. So MJF ended up heading back into the ring. He crawled to the corner to beg off Ospreay. So Ospreay ended up delivering some chops to MJF. Ospreay then ended up charging back at MJF. And MJF ended up catching Ospreay with a pile driver. And MJF ended up going for the cover. Ospreay kicked out. So Ospreay, at this point, he was struggling to move. MJF ended up having some words for Danny Garcia because he had saying those words through the camera. And then he went back on Ospreay. Ospreay started fighting back to his feet. He delivered a chop to MJF. Ospreay then hit the ropes, but he ended up running right into a knee from MJF. MJF ended up going back after, Ospreay's legs. He ended up setting up for a figure four leg lock to Ospreay. MJF then slapped Ospreay and used the pressure to force Ospreay to his shoulders for a near fall. But Ospreay ended up working to reverse the pressure onto MJF. So MJF decided to reverse course to keep the figure four locked in on Ospreay. So Ospreay grabbed the bottom rope, forced the break. Ospreay slowly ended up getting to his feet. MJF sent Ospreay into the corner for some chops. He then sent Ospreay across the ring. So we had Ospreay end up favoring his knee. He was selling his injured knee. MJF then ended up bringing Ospreay back up for another chop. He ended up sending Ospreay into the ropes. Ospreay's knee seemingly gave out, which caused Ospreay to crash down to the canvas. Ospreay then ended up checking on his knee on the ring apron while the ref was checking on him. But MJF went right back by going after Ospreay. So Ospreay started fighting back, delivered some chops to MJF. He was shown struggling to walk because of his knee. So MJF delivered a chop block to Ospreay's knee. So MJF ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay kicked out. MJF took Ospreay to the ropes for some strikes. He ended up sending him across the ring, only for Ospreay to catch MJF and drop him down to the canvas. MJF managed to get back to his feet. He was calling for a brainbuster to Ospreay, but Ospreay ended up fighting out of that, and he pinned the Oz cutter to MJF. MJF rolled out of the ring, and Ospreay was looking to go for the Oz Cutter on the apron to MJF, but MJF ended up falling backward to avoid the Oz Cutter, which forced Ospreay to crash onto the apron. Ospreay then looked hurt as he was being checked on. So then Dynamite went to commercial, for the picture-in-picture. So then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Ospreay headed to the ropes. He was cut off by MJF because MJF was going for the Salt of the Earth, but instead he ended up setting up for the Made in Japan to Ospreay, and MJF ended up going for the cover. Ospreay kicked out. Ospreay used the ropes to get back to his feet, but MJF was still on top of Ospreay, wearing him down. Ospreay ended up taking to the ropes to drop MJF with a corkscrew kick. Ospreay was shown favoring his shoulder at this point as he brought MJF back to his feet. Ospreay was laying in a couple of strikes to MJF. MJF fought back and delivered an elbow to Ospreay. So Ospreay ended up poisoning MJF onto his shoulder, and he had pinned a modified Blue Thunder Bomb to MJF. So Ospreay went for the cover. MJF kicked out. MJF rolled to the apron, and he had fallen to the outside, to the floor. Ospreay followed MJF to the outside, but he was fought off by MJF, who ended up escaping through the crowd. So Ospreay ended up chasing after MJF, ended up brawling through the stands. We had Ospreay end up getting a high five from a fan, and he ended up bringing MJF back to a ringside with some strikes. And there was a point in the match where this girl ended up hitting MJF, which was funny. So we had Ospreay end up dipping MJF into a trash can, and he ended up taking MJF over the barricade. Both men were finally back at ringside. Ospreay set MJF on the table. He ended up climbing up to the top. MJF then dropped off the table, and he rolled back into the ring. Ospreay got caught by MJF, and he ended up going for the cover, and he ended up cowering into a cover of his own, Ospreay. MJF ended up getting another near fall. They started trading off, near fall attempts. Ospreay ended up getting back to his feet, only for MJF to get to the turnbuckle to deliver a Long Island Sunrise to Ospreay. MJF ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay ended up kicking out. So the fight ended up going outside as MJF ended up sending Ospreay on the table, and he ended up climbing the turnbuckle. So Ospreay slid off the table. MJF ended up dropping down. He went back on the attack on Ospreay as he sent Ospreay into the barricade. MJF then attacked Ospreay's arm. And once again, at this point, MJF called out Danny Garcia through the camera. And then he turns his attention back to Ospreay, headed back to the ring to break the ref's count. So we had MJF end up going back outside. He ended up running right into Ospreay. He then mocked the crowd. He ended up grabbing a water bottle to take a sip of the water, and he spilt the water on Doc Sampson. And then he ended up going back after Ospreay. MJF then sent Ospreay toward the barricade, but Ospreay leapt on the barricade, and he delivered the Oz Cutter to MJF on the floor. So MJF ended up teasing the crossroads on Ospreay because Ospreay brought MJF back into the ring. So Ospreay then delivered the crossroads to MJF. MJF got sent to the corner. He used the ref as a shield to get one over on Ospreay. And he ended up going for the cover on Ospreay. Ospreay kicked out. MJF then set Ospreay up for a heat seeker that Ospreay ended up evading. And then Ospreay got caught by MJF on the rope. So MJF ended up going for the cover. Ospreay kicked out. We had MJF ended up setting up for a tombstone pile driver on the apron, but Ospreay ended up escaping. Ospreay ended up going for a tombstone pile driver of his own, but MJF countered out of that. But MJF ended up catching a kick to the head by Ospreay. And Ospreay followed that kick up with a Styles Clash to MJF onto the apron, which was great. So AJ Styles would be proud of Ospreay there. Ospreay ended up sending MJF back into the ring for a cover, but MJF managed to kick out. So then Dynamite went to commercial. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, MJF was shown head to the ropes to take advantage of the match. But he was cut off by Ospreay because Ospreay ended up going for the cover and MJF kicked out. Ospreay took it to the ropes, only to be caught by MJF with a tombstone pile driver. So MJF ended up going for the cover, and Ospreay ended up kicking out. Now, at this point, these two were basically catching their breath. You could tell that both these guys were exhausted. So we had MJF ended up going right after Ospreay's shoulder. He ended up wrapping tape around Ospreay's throat. So the ref admonished MJF for that, and MJF ended up going back after Ospreay, sending Ospreay into the corner. MJF then mocked the fans as he ended up bringing Ospreay back to his feet. Ospreay ended up sending MJF into the corner, and he started fighting back until MJF ended up dropping Ospreay down to the canvas. Ospreay ended up managing to get back into it as he sent MJF to the outside. But MJF ended up cutting off a dive attempt from Ospreay. So Ospreay later on ended up getting intercepted on a turnbuckle as MJF was looking to go for a Hurricanrana. But Ospreay caught MJF and dropped him down to the canvas with an avalanche Styles Clash, which was amazing. Ospreay struggled to pin MJF, and this cost MJF to grab a rope to force the break. So MJF ended up catching Ospreay on the ropes before hitting a heat seeker, and that ended up driving Ospreay's head onto the apron. MJF ended up setting Ospreay onto the table outside again. MJF then climbed up to the top, and he landed a elbow drop, which drove Ospreay through the table. So both guys were barely moving. So the ref ended up checking on both MJF and Ospreay, and once again, we went to commercial. 3 commercial breaks during this match here. So then, as Dynamite came back from the commercial, MJF ended up catching Ospreay with a standing armbar as he used the top rope for leverage. MJF ended up grabbing the rope again until the ref once again ended up giving out to MJF about it because, he admonishes MJF because he ended up using the standing armbar, using the top rope for leverage. So it led to a point where the ref ended up kicking MJF's hand off the rope. So this threw MJF off enough for Ospreay to get a couple near falls on MJF, and they were just going for near falls. So Ospreay ended up delivering a backslide to MJF. He ended up going for the cover, to which MJF kicked out. So later on, both men were still down as the ref ended up checking on them. And at the end of the match, we had MJF ended up taking advantage by shoving Ospreay into the ref because Ospreay was going to go for the Tiger Driver on MJF, but he paused. So that led to MJF ended up taking advantage by shoving Ospreay into the ref. So the ref was down. MJF appeared to be setting up for something. He ended up catching Ospreay with a massive right hand. So MJF ended up going for the cover, and there was literally 2 seconds left in the match. So MJF ended up going for the cover, and there you go. MJF ended up winning the match, and he is the new international champion. So post-match, we had medics and officials end up checking on both MJF and Ospreay because both of them were passed out. So we got the shot of what MJF used to pick up the win against Ospreay. And MJF used the Dynamite Diamond Ring to knock out Ospreay and win the International Championship. So MJF threw the ring out to the floor. He was then given some oxygen, and MJF ended up having enough time to say, we can thank him later. So pretty much that was basically that. You just saw that shot with the oxygen mask on MJF and him holding up the International Championship. But what a match this was. This was a fantastic match. This was a pay-per-view match here on Dynamite. And MJF is going to bring prestige to the International Championship. So MJF is going to be one hell of an international champion. He's going to be champion for, a while, in my opinion. But overall, fantastic match this was between MJF and Will Ospreay. 59 minutes and 58 seconds this match went. Took up the entire first hour of Dynamite. But great match it was. And the fans there in Little Rock enjoyed the hell out of this. I mean, they were on their feet. This match had the crowd's attention. So then we saw the Acclaimed, Anthony Bowens and Max Caster. They were backstage, and they ended up talking to Mark Briscoe about them joining Team AEW next week for Blood and Guts. So Briscoe ended up accepting the Acclaimed's offer. So pretty much, the Acclaimed are going to be in Team AEW for Blood and Guts next week, which I am looking forward to. And can you believe this? We went from an amazing match with MJF and Will Ospreay to, hi guys, hi everybody, to the shit known as the Learning Tree. Can you fucking believe this? It's TV time with the Learning Tree. More like channel changing time. So Big Bill was in the ring. We saw that stupid cutout of the tree in there and the grass, the rug that looked like grass in the ring. Big Bill ended up welcoming Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho then comes out, waving and smiling as always. And then I hear the remotes being picked up by people. To me, I'm like, when Jericho comes out, I'm like, where's the remote? Where's the remote? Oh, here it is. Boom. Mute the TV. Change the channel to, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on ABC with Jimmy Kimmel. Whatever what the fuck was on. So, Jericho was like, his shtick, hi guys. Hi, everybody! So he ended up talking about being at the very first Dynamite as we celebrate the 250th Dynamite. Jericho then admonishes those who don't take the advice of the Learning Tree. So he showed footage of what happened to Hook, Shibata, and Samoa Joe. The whole shtick where he ended up shooting a fireball at Hook. So we saw that. So Jericho ended up wanting to know who would be crazy enough not to listen to the Learning Tree. And Minoru Suzuki ended up walking down to the ring. Suzuki got a good reaction from the crowd there in Little Rock. Suzuki had a paper in his hand. And he stared down Jericho, Big Bill, and Brian Keith. So Suzuki grabbed the mic. He ended up saying, next week. So Brian Keith ended up reading off the paper. And next week, we're going to have a FTW Championship match between Suzuki and Jericho. And also, Big Bill and Brian Keith are barred from ringside. So it's going to be a one-on-one match with Suzuki and Jericho. So Suzuki then headbutts Jericho. He then left the ring, and pretty much that was basically that. Thank you, Suzuki, for saving us from the torture of what Jericho was going to say else. So next week, like I said, FTW Championship match, Suzuki versus Jericho. And then we went backstage, and the Elite responded to Team AEW's promo from earlier. The Young Bucks, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, hyped themselves up, as well as Kazuchika Okada and Jack Perry. They end up welcoming back Hangman and Page to join their team next week for Blood and Guts. So then Mercedes Mone ended up interrupting. She ended up thanking the EVPs for banning Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, from backstage. So Okada ended up asking if Monet can do the CEO dance for them. And pretty much that was basically that. And then we had Mercedes Mone versus Nyla Rose. This was for the TBS Championship. And I'm like, this makes no sense. What did Nyla Rose do to earn an opportunity to get a match for the TBS Championship against Mercedes Mone? What did she do? Absolutely nothing. So we're just throwing out random matches here. We're just giving out title shots. But this was just a very meh match here. So Mercedes Mone ended up coming out first. Of course, we had the CEO chants, ringing out. And then Nyla Rose came out. Match ended up getting underway. Mercedes ended up going for a lockup on Nyla Rose, but she was quickly sent to the corner by Nyla. So we had Nyla end up dropping Mercedes down to the canvas. Mercedes ended up managing to turn things around with a couple of kicks to Nyla Rose. She ended up using the corner to inflict some damage to Nyla Rose, but Nyla Rose fought right back, only for Mercedes to evade a delayed vertical suplex from Nyla. So Mercedes ended up going for a tornado DDT, but she ended up getting caught by Nyla, who ended up hanging her up on the top rope, and then she ended up delivering a knee drop. Nyla then went for the cover as Mercedes ended up kicking out. So then Dynamite went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back from the commercial, Mercedes ended up locking in a rear choke to Nyla Rose, but that was broken up with a snap suplex from Nyla Rose, and that forced Mercedes to escape to the corner, where Nyla ended up catching Mercedes with a chop. Mercedes ended up heading to the opposite corner. She was then caught by Nyla Rose with a hip attack. Nyla Rose ended up going for the cover, and Mercedes ended up kicking out. Nyla then ended up climbing the turnbuckle, but she was then caught off by Mercedes. Mercedes ended up hitting a splash and a run drop kick in the corner to Nyla. Mercedes then climbed back up, and she delivered a Meteora, an awful looking Meteora, to Nyla Rose. So Mercedes went for the cover, and Nyla ended up kicking out. So we had Mercedes end up pulling out a glove with CEO on it. Basically, Mercedes was mocking Britt Baker. When Britt Baker does the lockjaw. So Mercedes did do the lockjaw on Nyla Rose. So Nyla ended up breaking out of the lockjaw by biting Mercedes' hand. Mercedes then transitioned that into a statement maker, which forced Nyla to tap out. So there you go. Mercedes Mone ended up winning the match, retaining the TBS Championship. Post-match, Mercedes ended up celebrating. She left the ring. She then ripped up a sign that said DMD CEO on it. Mercedes then ripped up the sign from that fan who was wearing a Sting mask. So the fan in that mask shoved Mercedes. So the fan took off the mask, and it was revealed to be Britt Baker. So Britt Baker ended up rushing after Mercedes, but security was able to intercede between Britt Baker and Mercedes before things got too crazy for the two of them. But overall, this was just a meh match here. I'm like, what did Nyla Rose do to earn an opportunity at the TBS Championship? Very random match this was. And then we had Jack Perry as Dynamite came back from the commercial. Jack Perry ended up addressing Darby Allin's challenge from last week. He ended up telling him to find the champ tonight to find out what a real sacrifice looks like. So that was what Jack Perry had to say. And then we had timeless Toni Storm's music end up hitting. So we did not get Toni Storm. We got Mariah May. Mariah May was dressed like timeless Toni Storm. And she headed to the ring. Mariah May then got into the ring. She grabbed the mic. She ended up saying that everyone saw this coming. What happened last week. Except for Toni Storm. So Mariah May ended up calling Toni Storm a woman so desperate for a spotlight that she didn't see she was giving it all away. And the question shouldn't be why. It should be, Mariah, what took so long? Mariah then ended up saying that she didn't think it would take this long either, but she was having so much fun that she couldn't help string things along until she saw Wembley. She ended up saying that she can be Toni Storm, but now can be so much more. She was like, but don't worry, Toni, I still love you. So the crowd ended up chanting, we want Toni. They were giving Mariah May the what treatment. So Mariah May ended up saying that she never loved Toni Storm more than when she was on her knees, begging her to stop. So Mariah called that Toni's greatest performance. And Mariah May ended up saying that her greatest performance will be at All In. Because All Elite Wrestling is now all about Mariah. So pretty much that was what Mariah May had to say, but this promo felt flat from Mariah May. She's a good wrestler, good in the ring, but this promo ended up falling flat, in my opinion. And then we had the Bang Bang Gang. They were backstage. They ended up addressing having the Unified World Trios Championship stripped because of the footage from what we saw on Collision on Saturday. So Christopher Daniels, the fake Adam Pearce, confronted the Bang Bang Gang to get the titles before the group calls out the patriarchy. So they have saying that if you're not down with that, we've got 2 words for you. Guns up. So pretty much that was that. Main event. Kazuchika Okada versus Swerve Strickland. Champion versus champion match. So yeah, Kazuchika Okada ended up coming out first. And then we had Swerve Strickland end up coming out. And this was a good match here. This was another pay-per-view match on Dynamite here tonight for its 250th episode. So the match got underway. Both guys ended up locking up. So Okada ended up getting the advantage, only for Swerve to turn things around. Both guys took it to the ropes. Swerve ended up pinning an arm drag on Okada. So Okada ended up responding with a head scissors that Swerve ended up escaping. Okada ended up sending Swerve to the corner, but Swerve ended up countering. He ended up taking Okada down to the canvas, and then he ended up pinning an uppercut to Okada off the ropes. So we had Okada end up mocking Swerve, and Swerve ended up delivering a kick to Okada. Swerve left the ring, but he was cut off with a DDT from Okada. And then Dynamite went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back from the commercial, Okada ended up getting caught with a strike on the jaw from Swerve. So Okada ended up going after Swerve on the apron. Swerve ended up finding out the Tombstone Piledriver attempt from Okada. Swerve took it to the corner for a rolling flatliner, which was followed by a lung blower on Okada. Swerve ended up going for the cover, and Okada ended up kicking out. Swerve headed to the corner, but he was then cut off by Okada. Okada delivered a neck breaker to Swerve. He ended up going for the cover, and Swerve ended up kicking out. Okada brought Swerve up. He ended up hitting a scoop slam. He climbed up to the top to deliver an elbow drop to Swerve, and Swerve ended up rolling Okada up, and Okada kicked out. So Swerve started fighting back at Okada, but he was quickly cut off by him because Okada delivered a drop kick to Swerve. Okada ended up going to the cover, but he was then intercepted by Swerve to deliver a neck breaker and a power slam to Okada. Swerve went up to the top. Okada ended up evading a Swerve stomp, and he dropped Swerve with a Tombstone Piledriver. Okada then ended up going for the Rainmaker Lariat, but it got countered by Swerve. And that's when the Young Bucks ended up rushing into the ring. They blindsided Swerve. The ref called for the bell. So Swerve Strickland won the match by disqualification. Post-match, Jack Perry ended up running in to gang up on Swerve. And then the Acclaimed ended up coming out. Mark Briscoe then ended up running down to even the odds. So we had Swerve end up clearing the ring, and Hangman Page end up coming down to confront Swerve. So Page and Swerve end up brawling out of the ring. They end up going through the crowd, and then we turn to Mark Briscoe, the Acclaimed, and the Bucks, out there on the outside. And then Darby Allin's music ended up hitting. The crowd was getting riled up. They were loving to hear, Darby Allin's theme play. So we finally saw Darby Allin. Darby Allin ended up coming from the rafters, just like Sting. He came down from the rafters to join in on the fray of what was going on outside. So officials were down there. They were doing all they could to break things up. And pretty much that was how Dynamite went off the air tonight. But this was set up for, Team AEW versus Team Elite at Blood and Guts for next week, which I am looking forward to. Should be pretty interesting next week for Dynamite, for Blood and Guts. But overall, Dynamite's 250th show, was a good show, in my opinion. But anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's Dynamite. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video, which will be a review of Twisters, which I will be seeing tomorrow afternoon. So expect a review of that, which I'm looking forward to Twisters. So until then, I'll see you all later.